What did David Foster Wallace think of Barack Obama? And this is going to be a fun analysis because Wallace never saw Obama get elected or serve as president because 2 months before the 2008 election, Wallace killed himself. But 5 months before that, him killing himself, he gave an interview, probably one of the last of his life, where he talked about Barack Obama. And we're going to be reviewing those quotes today. And my name is Ian, and on this channel, we cover the greatest authors and books of all time. And this is also the headquarters of David Foster Wallace content here on YouTube. I already have 70 videos like this down in the playlist below. And so when you are done with this one, I hope to see you in another. So let us now hear from Wallace. And he's talking about, at the start, the similarities between John McCain and Barack Obama. There's some similarities. The ability to attract new voters, independence, the ability to raise serious money in a grassroots way via the web. But there are also lots of differences, many too obvious to need pointing out. Obama is an orator, for one thing, a rhetorician of the old school. To me, that seems more classically populist than McCain, who's not a good speechmaker and whose great strengths are Q&As and small group press confabs. But there's a bigger reason. The truth, as I see it, is that the previous 7 years and 4 months of the Bush administration have been such an unmitigated horseshow of rapacity, hubris, incompetence, mendacity, corruption, cynicism, and contempt for the electorate that it's very difficult to imagine how a self-identified Republican could try to position himself as a populist. And speaking of young voters caring about voting, well, it's a very different situation. If nothing else, the previous 7 years and 4 months have helped make it clear that it actually matters a whole lot who gets elected president. A whole lot. There's also the fact that there's now certain really urgent galvanizing problems. Price of oil, carbon emissions, Iraq. They're apt to get more voters of all ages and education levels to the polls. And what's fun about looking at history in retrospect is that Wallace got duped. Much like many people this year are going to get duped into Trump or Robert F. Kennedy or Joe Biden or whoever, the lesser of two evils, which is the biggest lie that's ever been shoved down our throat ever. It's like, do you want to drink Dr. Pepper, Coke, or Pepsi? And as I talk about on this show all the time, and I don't think it's a coincidence that Wallace is getting into politics and becoming less apolitical and starting to care more about all this stuff, when he starts to live in California and is moving slowly toward his mental health decline and suicide. But there are so many great writers out there, great thinkers, including myself, who have put way too much energy into politics, thinking about it, debating, getting dopamine spikes every single time you see something happening. And what it's done for you and for the country is absolutely nothing. Your interest in politics and what you have done has been almost minuscule compared to the amount of growth and change you could have created with the art within your own soul. And so obviously, Barack Obama sucked, but anyone in 2008 could have seen that coming if they were open-minded and detached from the whole situation. We have John McCain, the old guard neocon, versus a populist who's been bought out by corporations and all the industries in general. And Wallace here is talking about Iraq, oil, carbon emissions. Did Barack Obama fix any of those things? How many people died from drone strikes in the Middle East during his pregnancy? And one day we are going to look back at democracy and how we were treating, our elections and these leaders as we look back at monarchs. When we think about monarchs and what people were going through in the 1700s and 1800s, we laugh. We think it's silly. How could they be so dumb? That's how one day people a couple hundred years from now are going to laugh about democracy and how we gave our right to rule ourselves, our moral right to others to rule over us morally. And with most populist candidates, or good politicians in general, they have this tagline of hope. Obama actually literally used that. But no matter what, if you want to make a change in your life and build a legacy for you and your family and kind of pivot what's happening in your reality, especially in the United States of America. I understand if you are living in Colombia or in Africa or some country where there are like major political things happening in your life, if you gain too much money or if you made a couple wrong missteps, you could be killed or something like that could happen. But in America in general, no matter who is the president and no matter how much inflation is going on or what is happening, if you focus on yourself and maybe get involved with your local politics or even your state politics if you want to, and forget about all the national stuff and raise your kids right and focus on educating them in the proper way, then everything's going to take care of itself. Because the people who get sucked, it's just like marketing. When you look at business and marketing, there has to be a pain point. And that's what's so funny about this channel, and I think the writing world in general, and why a lot of people quit BookTube, is that you guys out there listening right now, you guys are fucking smart. Most of not well, I would say maybe most of you guys are smarter than I am, especially in a lot of different aspects of knowledge and stuff. That's obvious. And so you are mostly here to hear me commentate on these things, bring you new quotes that you've maybe never heard before, things like that. Maybe to give you some motivation and stuff. And that's maybe a pain point. You need some motivation in a world where you are lonely and there aren't really people to support you. I feel that my family, a lot of my friends don't support me on my journey as a writer or as a creator of literature content. So I feel that. But our pain points aren't as bad as most other industries. I can't help you get healthier, get wealthier, or have a better relationship, really. And in terms of online content creation or politics, that's what it's about. That's what Obama is selling. That's what every politician is selling. You're going to have more money. Your town's going to be better. You're going to have better relationships and you'll feel more at ease. And there's health stuff involved. Like when we saw with COVID, there are literally health mandates and different opinions on health. So politics, much like marketing, are connected to pain. But if you are full inside, if you have a high level of emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical education, you aren't going to have these massive pain points that can be sold to you. And what is happening to Wallace at this time? He has this massive pain inside of him. First of all, I think when he moved to California and was with his wife, I've heard conflicting stories. Some people have said that she was really good to him. There have been other people who said that she was like a very toxic person. I don't know. But nonetheless, it seemed that Wallace, when he moved to California, probably like many people do, took a super liberal turn. He was working at a college with a lot of students and other professors who were obviously liberal, and living in probably one of the more Democrat states in America, outside of like New York. And I feel, and he got caught up also in, and if you aren't observant of the laws of nature, for instance, there is the law of rhythm, that if you go in one direction, you're going to have to swing back to the other direction. And we saw that with George Bush. George Bush made so many terrible decisions, was, in many ways, one of the worst presidents of all time, with No Child Left Behind and starting 2 unnecessary wars in the Middle East. Anyone with a brain would have known that going into Afghanistan and, in this for a long campaign that we were going to win was a crazy idea. That is like a 5 or 6 decade project to uplift Afghani people, because the problem with Afghanistan is that there are a bunch of farmers out in Afghanistan. Like, a lot of the population are these kind of rural people. And so what you are asking to elevate Afghani people and to educate them is that they are going to have to get into economic jobs or systems that are bigger than them just having a sheep herd and like being living out in these nomadic lifestyles. So that's what you are asking. So then they look at places. So who else has done that? If you look at places like Vietnam or India or even the other Arab countries, what that means is that they are going to have to move off of their farms. So these men have guns, they have a wife, or sometimes I don't know if they have multiple wives in Afghanistan, but they have a wife, they have their kids, they have their farm, they have some land. Okay, that's what they are doing. So you're going to ask them to move out of there and go work in call centers in a city. That's what economic development looks like. You're going to have to do the lowest of the low jobs and then slowly build up these cities in this society. That's a pretty hard pitch to give out to somebody. And that's what economic development is. And, that takes place over 5, 6, 7 decades. We were never committed to that vision. And that's why it was an absolutely useless war. We should have went and killed some people, obviously, got some revenge for 9/11 and been done with it. But, obviously Bush had to go to war with Saddam and the Middle East because his dad went to war. Anyway, we don't need to get into George Bush, but George did such a terrible job that we swung back into populism. And then after Obama, we swung back into populism with Trump. And then we're swinging back and forth now. And as I talk about on this show all the time, most people in the world are unconscious. You should go watch the Adam Curtis documentary, which is free on YouTube, called The Century of the Self, which shows how the Nazis in America and a lot of the major countries took Sigmund Freud's teachings in like the 1920s and 1930s and used them to manipulate people and basically not elevate us, but make us more unconscious and throw us into the society that we are in now. And, speaking about the good points of Obama, obviously he was a beautiful orator. I remember, being young. I was in early high school when he got elected, and watching him speak himself, it was very interesting to see someone, even because he was better than most of the other senators and other House of Representative, members of the House of Representatives when it came to speaking. And so here we are again in the 2024 election. I'm sure there's going to be riots this summer. There's going to be problems. If Donald Trump wins in November, there could be riots again. Could be a riot if Joe Biden wins. Who knows? But probably the best thing that you can do is, watch from the periphery just to make sure that things don't go too crazy and you could get to safety if you need to. But in general, the outside world is a reflection of your own internal consciousness. And that's not to say that if you fix your shit and you stop smoking cigarettes, then the next president's going to be a philosopher. No, but how you see and perceive reality out there and what you actually let in is a general reflection of what's going on the interior. And if you are letting Donald Trump and Joe Biden and the arguments about transgenderism or any of these things kind of affect you too heavily, then it's taking away your actual essence. It's taking away something important that can be used now with scalable internet mediums, whether it's through writing or through video or through whatever. And you can use a pen name to help thousands of people. There are people with pen names on Substack or on other free platforms who have changed thousands of people's lives, and they've started with no following, and that can be you. That's what we are looking for when we cut out some of these things. It's not just politics. It's going to be toxic relationships in your life. It's going to be that bag of fucking hot Cheetos maybe you eat every week. These things are sucking away the soul, sucking away your energy. We have to start reclaiming them bit by bit, year by year. This isn't going to be something that happens overnight. This isn't going to be even a 5-year project. This is a 10-year project. And something that you can do, one of the easier mountains to overcome, is just slowly moving away from the news, moving away from these people whose whole job is to manipulate you and touch on these pain points. And so if we are going to write conscious, be conscious, and have a right conscious, we can't get into the muck. So I love you guys. Thank you guys for being here. It also kind of sucks to see Wallace just get, manipulated into politics, but this can happen to anybody. I knew so many people in 2016 who were apolitical, who were kind of heading somewhere, and they got sucked into the whole show, whether it was for Hillary or for Donald, and they've almost never recovered. Maybe they've realized now that the presidency isn't as big of a deal, but they are talking about this issue or that issue, abortion, and I've never heard them talk. Maybe it's just I'm getting older, and as my age group gets older, we get more political, as everybody does. When you're 18, it's easy to be an anarchist and not care. And so maybe I'm just the immature one. But I think it's better to have a child's mind and mindset in this situation than not.